So you're officially our first repeat guest.
Awesome. It's always good to be back.
The response from our last pod together, and it's something that we didn't even plan.
No, not at all.
You just showed up one day just to check out what we had going on.
Kind of like why I'm here today.
And all of a sudden, it just went crazy.
It did. It had a lot of good response.
And I found the response extremely surprising. Number one is that on YouTube, the response was very positive, and it was 90% men. We had a clip that I put on TikTok, and that clip was 90% women.
Maybe that just tells you about the market demographics of those two platforms. Huh?
I think more men are on TikTok than women. But for some reason, the clip on TikTok resonated.
Are
with
more men
women.
on TikTok
I
than women?
believe so.
I guess I feel like that's a shocking piece of news to me. I feel like more women are on TikTok, and the reason is because there's more content from women there. But that doesn't mean that the consumers aren't.
Correct. Guys tend to have the shorter attention span. They like the quick stuff. And the clip I put on TikTok was almost a full minute, which is a long clip
time for TikTok. Yeah.
And the amount of people that watched the whole thing. Hold on, the TikTok clip, just to have reference, was our quick discussion about are there any good men for your daughters? That was the clip.
Interesting.
And that clip, I'm going to tell you how it did.
And so
'Cause I don't have a huge TikTok account.
Well, actually, as you're looking that up, I'll describe maybe some assumptions I have here. If the vast majority of users are consumers on TikTok are men, but the vast majority of content creators are women, those content creators don't have a lot of content to watch on TikTok. And so when there is something that is talking about maybe, let's just say what we were talking about, are there good, women for men out there? Maybe they're thinking about their daughters. Maybe they're thinking about their kids, and they're like, "Oh my gosh! Finally, maybe some men are actually talking about something that might be germane or contextually relative to what I care about."
Yes, and there's another aspect to that which I did not see coming. So I'm going to go over the numbers real quickly, so we have an idea. It did 321,000 views, 58,000 likes, 1,000 comments, and more importantly, it had 6,800 shares and 7,500 saves.
Wow.
So analytically, these are really big numbers. The engagement on this post is higher than a typical viral TikTok content.
Well, let me pause you. What is viral numbers on TikTok these days?
I think viral is in the millions.
Okay.
But for a small page like me, which is 15, 20,000 people, I was at 15,000. Now I'm at 20,000.
Okay.
Those 5,000, all women. They all watch this one clip and they're like, just in case he says something else interesting, I want to know more.
Yeah. If you're a single guy, I guess that could be enticing.
That's true. That's true. And the amount, because I'm scrolling through it to see like who's following, who's favoriting, because I'm trying to get data, right? Context of why people are engaging with this post so much. Foreign Miss Mexico was one that favored and liked this.
Former Miss Mexico?
Yes.
Does she have kids? Does she care about this stuff?
All kinds of celebrities.
I'm almost...
It got reshared and duetted, and all women.
Really? I almost wonder if it's maybe less about the women that are content creators on TikTok that are thinking about their kids or their daughter. It might be more of a projection of the women who are just like, did I miss the boat? Did I mess up? What are these guys talking about?
It is mostly because I read through all the comments because I'm trying to get a gauge of why this resonated with so many people. Majority of people are, I wish my dad was like that.
Oh.
Or my dad was not like that. My dad was an alcoholic. My dad was a shitball. Or I don't want my daughter to marry a guy like my father.
Ooh, that's really interesting.
Yes. It was not what I thought.
That's really interesting because, let's be honest, most women will marry someone just like their father.
Correct. Whether they like it or not.
Yeah, it's because they've been modeled that type of, relationship with their dad 18 years until they leave the house. That's the model that's been ingrained into them. And so it seems antithetical that they would be going against that I guess unless their father was really abusive or really just a piece of shit.
I mean, there were some comments there. A lot of comments said, "I didn't grow up with a dad. What am I supposed to do?" And those comments broke my heart, right? Because that's really sad. But those are the majority of the comments out there. And I thought it was because, oh, look at these guys and they're going to be good fathers. I thought that was their initial reason why.
It's never about you. It's never about us. It's always about projection.
It was exactly what it was. They're like, I wish I had this, or I didn't have this. And number one, women and daddy issues is a huge thing, obviously. And that's really the reason why it resonated with so many people.
So how did we do on YouTube?
So on YouTube, I put up a 8-minute clip of us talking about Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
I called it 2 Men Have a Logical Discussion on the Impact of Andrew Tate. And for the first day, it, like trickled around. All of a sudden, one night, it just went boom. And I thought it was going to be, when I woke up in the morning and I saw that, I thought it was going to be all top G, top G, top G, free top G. Right, I thought that's what the comments would be. It was 2 things. Number one, I've never seen 2 Asian guys talk about a controversial topic before. Huge amount of comments saying that. People don't do it, which is, I don't know why that is. Why don't Asian guys take on hard topics?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not in the millennial podcast world, if you know what I mean. So I don't have a YouTube or social platforms suggesting to me kind of the millennial podcasting model that I see sometimes now and again, where it's a bunch of young bloods around a table and they're talking about mostly just relationships, right? That's the primary topic, and about how relationships suck in these days, and how about women and men are constantly at each other's throats. Suffice to say, I haven't seen, other than Bobby Lee, which is mostly like comedian type of really degenerate shit.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of him.
Well, that's fair. You don't have to be a fan of him. I think the stuff that I've seen Asians talk about is just garbage. It's just garbage. It's just nonsense.
I think most Asians online are trying to become famous. They're trying to get into Hollywood in one way, shape, or form. And in order to do so, they need to speak that language.
That's too bad.
So they err on the side of wokeness because they don't care about what they think or society. They care about, hey, will someone cast me?
The optics.
Exactly. And because of that, they don't touch those sticky topics, which I thought was really interesting, because we got that comment a lot.
I think a lot of also has to do, what is always fascinating to me is when I watch those podcast shows, it's a bunch of young bloods who aren't married.
Correct.
And they don't have kids. And so I'm not going to sit there and listen to the profound ideas and the revelations of a 22-year-old who thinks they know everything about relationships and kids and all this stuff. It's not to say that you're not allowed to have an opinion. You can have an opinion, but your opinion isn't really well informed if you're not of age and you don't have the experience, and you don't really know what you're talking about, which is so fascinating to me that these young bloods are talking about, here's how you need to raise kids. It's like, how the hell would you know?
Yeah.
How would you know?
No clue.
No clue.
So I'll give you a quick demographic on that video. 30%, 18 to 24, 95% male, by the way. 18 to 24, 30%, 46%, 25 to 34. And then 17%, 35 to 44, and 5%, 45 to 54. The demographic actually skewed older.
Yeah.
It's not a young demographic. So you said millennials. This was not a millennial video. The people that video resonated with actually skewed closer to our age. People that grew up in our time, in our generation, never heard or saw somebody take on this controversial type of topic before. And I think that's what resonated with them.
Do you think it's also the fact that we're 2 Asian men, and that's like a big optical difference?
I mean, there was a couple of comments from other parts of the world going, wow, the Asians support Top G.
I guess we can accept some of the shallowness of it.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of comments also saying that every piece of content that they've seen so far on Andrew Tate in the last 3 months or since his arrest is one-sided. It is always taking the extreme side of it. Either it's, I can't believe they free Top G and he's innocent and everyone's against him, or it's, this guy's misogynist, this guy's rapist, this guy's the worst guy ever. No one's ever taking that, hey, let's just take a step back and just look at the big picture.
Right.
Nobody's doing that on the internet. Everyone wants to pick the polarizing side.
That's probably certainly more exciting to listen to when
Correct.
people are raging against the machine and giving their hot-blooded takes on what they think is happening. I think you and I are of age in which we can look at it from a holistic perspective. Also, the fact that we don't have kids of age that are telling us about, Andrew Tate and these types of things. So I guess the question that I have here, Matt, is based on the data that you've received. It's one piece, it's one piece of data really. What do you think we should do? What do you think needs to happen? What do you think the world is looking for, I guess, is the question.
I think it's two things, because I think what men and women want are obviously very different. On the women's side, they want the content that Andrew Tate was showing, but they don't want it in the tone that he was giving it in.
Is that right?
That's what I feel.
So you're saying if we were to amalgamate the meta level of Andrew Tate's message, it's personal responsibility, be a man, shut up and work. It's all your fault at the end of the day, and women should be a good partner to men, not because we're equal, but because we're different and we have different roles, which is the more neutral way of looking and communicating his message. He tends to be a little aggressive on the women's side.
Correct.
So if we were to take the meta level of that, the women are saying, if I were to recontextualize it, we want men to be men. We want men to be providers. We want men to be, I heard one thing one time where this one podcast group was talking to these young hot-bodied women, and they were talking about, we want men who are classical, and we want men who are conservative. And the podcast host looked at them and said, well, if you want your men to be conservative and have a conservative model of men, then you have to be conservative women. You can't be this progressive, nut job who's crazy and wants all these things from the kind of progressive left of, all the crazy stuff they talk about. And so you can't want a classical traditional man but not be a traditional woman, I suppose, is what they were saying.
And I think they're expecting for the men to lead. So if the men are willing to lead that movement of being more classical men, there are plenty of women out there that want to follow that lead. But they don't want to go conservative first and lose an opportunity because they think what they're providing is what men want.
I was served up maybe it was a TikTok or maybe it was an Instagram, Matt, but I started getting served up these women who are going on TikTok or mobile, and they are complaining, and it's really sad actually. They're complaining that I'm 47 years old. Like, I'm pretty, I'm beautiful. And they're like crying, and they're like, I just can't find any men. But what they end up talking about is, it's like all the good men were taken up in their 20s and 30s. And I decided to have a career. I decided to be the full able-bodied woman who doesn't need a man. And this is where my path has taken me. I'm 47 years old and I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I don't have the partner that all my other lady friends have and the fun times they can have. So it's interesting that I'm starting to get served up by YouTube and TikTok and these social platforms, these women who seem to have deep regrets with the life that they've chosen. And now that they're in their 40s, it's almost too late.
It is, and it's sad. And it's not their fault. They were told this will be okay. You can go down this route of independence and that
you'll be happy.
You'll be happy. It'll be rewarding for you in your own right. And people are waking up 47 going, fuck, that was not true. Right?
47 is a little too late to wake up and be like, hey, I want a young blood man.
Not that good.
Yeah, it's not too good.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of that. I thought that was I mean, what do women really want? And I think they want conservative values.
So what do you think the men are looking for? Validation? Because we're not speaking in hyperbole. We're not being like, oh, free, Tate, or women are bitches and these types of things. We're not communicating these things. And so since we have, or at least on YouTube, you had a huge contingency of male consumers, what about our message do you think was appealing to them?
I think they're looking for men that are logical, that are willing to address issues without a huge bias, and that they can learn from. I got an enormous amount of messages on Instagram. Hey, I listened to that this morning and I want to get my shit together.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I'm an immigrant, and that was a lot too. I'm an immigrant. I'm just here trying to work hard, and I don't relate to all this stuff going on. I've had people that took the clips of the full format, put out clips, and they're sharing the clips almost like Andrew Tate style.
Really?
Sharing these clips all over the place. And I'll go through my YouTube or my shorts. I'm like, wait a second, that's me and Peter. I don't know who this guy is. Where the hell did this come from?
Wait, where's your Hustler University, man? Where's the Matt Kim Hustler University?
So I had one kid reach out, and he sent me a couple clips that he had made. And he said, hey, you just had a daughter. I know you're busy. I know you don't have a lot of time. So to help you, I made a couple clips, enjoy. And I looked at him like, they're really well done. And then I'm like, appreciate it. Thank you, whatever else. And he comes back and he says, by the way, if you want this to become a regular thing, I can do it for like a nominal fee. And I was like, okay, smart.
Well played.
Well played.
Value first. Value first.
How did you get that idea? He said, I learned it on Hustler University. I said, this bro learned something from that.
Bro.
He learned a hustle from Hustler's University. He proactively made some clips, had some context to make it in a way that I can relate to it. And I said, bro, I don't want it. I don't want to pay you, but somebody will.
Somebody will, yeah.
And this is a great idea. Yeah.
Good for him.
Good for him. Seriously, good for him.
I think that's really, I listened to a couple of clips that were giving an overview of what his Hustler University was about. And they were generally negative because I think that's the overall theme, and that's what gets the clicks, and that's what makes sense. But at the end of the day, regardless of the professionalism or the polish that was lacking in Hustler University, I look at Andrew Tate as less of what he says and more of the model.
Correct.
Right? Like, if you look at the meta level of what Andrew Tate's done, he is a man like every other man who doesn't stop. He has a particular message. Focus is good, so he doesn't stop. He focuses. He doesn't quit. And he models the hard work ethic, which, as you well know as an entrepreneur, the hard work ethic will get you pretty much everywhere you need to be, as long as you don't stop hustling or start working. Now, I think some of his advice is a little colored and a little maybe off tangent and maybe not always contextually relative to the audience. But at the end of the day, if you look at a man and the man won't stop and the man won't go away and the man keeps growing and the man keeps going, it's pretty much the calling of man anyway.
And I would argue that he may be the best communicator in the world today. I can't think of one person that communicates his message more clearly, more succinctly, and relates to his audience better than he does.
It's interesting you say that. My first inclination was my gut wanted me to disagree, but at the same point, the numbers don't lie. He's covered a lot of ground. He's covered the global audience. And when you say it's succinct and short and it's right on, yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's not, he doesn't speak with sophistication. I think he has sophistication back there. And I think he pulls back on that because he knows that might dilute his message. And so he goes to the uber simple, right? The uber clear. It's like, work hard. It's like, okay, say less. That's what we need to do, right?
And I mean, who out there can capture an audience right now like he can? If he gets out of jail, the first podcast he ever does will be the most listened to podcast in the history of the world.
Could be Joe Rogan beating for sure.
For sure. I'm going to say his first podcast out of jail, 100 million views.
Easy.
Easy.
And everyone wants to know what happened.
And that will clip to another 1 or 2 billion views. Because once it gets cut up and reshared and shared, billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 10 billion, who knows?
Well, yeah, all the social commentators are gonna clip it, and they're gonna do half-hour shows on a 2-minute clip.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna get massive for sure.
If he does an hour, 2 hours, maybe he'll go rant style and go 5 hours like he did with PBD. Who knows?
That would be good.
That thing will generate content, endless content for the rest of time.
I think we'll probably need to talk about it at some level.
And I'm sure if he gets out.
So what I love about our conversations here, Matt, is we can speak openly, freely about the business. We can actually speak, about kind of the meta of what we're doing here. And so I'm curious, and we can just have an open conversation about it. Is we have tapped into something, or say you've tapped into something. And I'm your guest. There seems to be a need from the women out there, the women content creators, the women content consumers, and there seems to be a message that the male content consumers are looking for. And so in your mind's eye, as for us two, should we continue to do this as an experiment? What are you thinking should kind of emerge from this data that we have here?
So when I had the idea to start a podcast, you were pretty much the first conversation I had. We sat down for maybe like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I mentioned this time, we were at Starbucks, and this happened multiple times. We're at Starbucks outside, Lamborghinis, whatever, drinking coffee, having a conversation about currency, having a current conversation about cryptocurrency also, about why gas prices go up relative to the price of the dollar. And we looked up, and there was like 10 people just sitting around listening to us.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember. There was a couple times that happened.
Yeah. And they were like, excuse us. We don't mean to intrude. We're just listening in. And it never occurred to me at that time. But going back and starting to consume more podcasts and more information over the last couple of years, I realized we were literally doing a live podcast. And people were sitting there listening to us. Like complete strangers. Yeah. Never met them before. They had no idea who we were. They just all of a sudden we're talking and we had a crowd. And I've never seen that before.
I've never had that happen either. I think that happened like 3 times.
Yeah.
I think it happened twice at the Starbucks over here, and I think it happened once when we were over at like Sweet Hut or the boba place or whatever. Yeah.
People just gather and just listen to us talk because we take on really sticky and really controversial things, but we're not like end of the world people. Well, maybe a little bit, right? But with a sense of logic, with a sense of looking at the big picture, and without the sense of just absolutely blaming people and not regurgitating just random things that we've heard, but actually using our brains. And I thought that was interesting because it was all a range of people.
We had one time we had a couple of old dudes, like totally boomers. I think they were in like their 70s or something like that. And they were just enamored by the topics. And I think there was a couple times they kind of cut in there asking questions about it. I remember that.
Yeah, they did ask questions like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And I was like, who are you guys again?
Yeah, and we're basically a bunch of nobodies, I guess, just sitting there having real candid conversations about kind of the social apparatus and what's happening around us,
And people are interested in that.
I think that's it.
I think that's what it is. People want to hear people have conversations of what they think in their head, but people don't talk about out loud. I think that's why Andrew Tate, again, did so well. He was saying things that people thought that people were scared to say. And maybe he went a little too extreme because, again, he's in jail and we're not.
I don't think Asians talking about the social clown fiesta that's happening around in our world is arrest worthy. I think we by nature as Asians are kind of excluded from that type of model. Don't you think?
Well, we are excluded because we don't do it. What happens when...
Are you saying that you want you and me to be the first Asian podcasters to get arrested for talking about personal responsibility?
You haven't made an impact on the internet until you've been canceled once.
Oof. Let me sit on that for a second. You haven't made an impact on the internet until you've been. You know what? You're probably not wrong.
Yeah,
you're probably not wrong.
If you haven't been canceled, it means you've been too safe.
Fair enough.
You've been saying what they want.
But
you to say.
we're two Asians, and we don't get overly emotional about the stuff that's going on. We're not using the Andrew Tate or any of the other influencer viral, being super animated and being all crazy. I guess I'm getting animated right now. I guess that's the extent of it. But I mean, I think what's nice about what we're recording here and the conversations we're having is it really is logic. It really is rationale. It's really down to earth. Hey, we're just two flesh and blood dudes. We're in our 40s. We got wives. We got kids, right? We're kind of the average Joe, if we can go that far, right? But we're allowing ourselves the time and the space to talk about these ideas without going to the logical extremes that will get clicks, but it still could be very entertaining and educational at the same time.
And I think that will provide more value for people in the long run, because people are looking for this. People are searching for it. People resonate with it. I think the internet makes it seem like everyone's so extreme, but the reality is most people are somewhere in the middle.
Fair enough, yeah.
But no one represents that middle. Why does everyone represent only the extremes when most people aren't in the extreme?
Maybe it's because the middle's boring.
Maybe it is, but shouldn't someone speak for them?
Maybe it's Matt Kim and
Peter Tennington
and the Ape, the Atlanta podcast experience.
Somebody needs to represent the majority. And I think the majority, and we call it the silent majority, right? The people who aren't extreme, that aren't racists, that aren't trans, everything. People that just kind of sit in the middle and are understanding of both sides just a little bit. Where are those people? And I think a lot of people are trying to go that way, but it's not easy to get clicks and views.
I'm curious if you've received any feedback from Asian men or Asian women our age within our demographic, what they say, because I don't know all the comments that you received on TikTok and YouTube and these different social platforms, but I'm curious if you got any Asian specific advice or Asian specific color commentary.
They haven't seen it before. And they wish there was someone out there that was doing that.
Really? That's encouraging. That is encouraging.
I almost feel like the internet has spoken to us, telling us where the gap in the marketplace is, what's lacking, and what they want.
So you guys are hearing it first. Two Asian men talking about social ideas in logical and rational and relatively even-keeled manner.
Correct.
Is that what the internet's looking for?
I think that's exactly what they're looking for. Willingness to take on the controversial topics. That's pretty much it.
So what's your first controversial topic for today?
Well, I think if we're
that was a big well.
Well, I think if we're gonna go into controversial topics, and if we're going to battle over the controversial topics of our time, we can't not talk about COVID. Oh, I think we just got demonetized.
We'll just call it the vid.
The algorithm knows.
The algorithm knows?
They know.
What should we call it then? We can't call it the vid. We can't call it the other thing. We can't say the jab or whatever.
I don't know what to call it. I think we just accept it as it is. And maybe it'll be taken down, maybe it won't. Who knows? But I think that's a place that we have to start.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the vid.
The vid. I feel like Joe Biden has recently said that he's going to end the COVID emergency.
What, May 11th or something
May
like that?
11th. And I think from what I've seen, it's been pushed back multiple times. But this is supposed to be the one.
Can I interject just a piece of commentary here? When I first heard that, Matt, my first thought was, how the hell does he know? Like, why is that the date? Like, what revolves around that date that is important so that he can use it as an optics play, a voting play, a feel-good play, some, which is often the case, a distraction play? Like, what's going to happen around May 11th that we are going to be distracted from, you know what I'm saying?
Or that...
Maybe that's just my distrust in government.
No, I completely understand it. Tonight, just for context, is the State of the Union.
Yes.
He needs to have that sound clip and that promise out there before State of the Union so that he can go out to the country and say, I cured COVID. Right? That's what he wants to do. I took it on and I handled it. And because of me, it's over now.
It's over.
And he had to pick a date far enough out where people are like, oh, and they forget about the date. If you did it next month, people are like, wait a second, I thought it was over. You got to put it out right before summer when COVID dies down anyway. And then all of a sudden, he's like, look, it's over. And people are like, yeah, you're right. Good job. Good job.
Okay. His State of the Union address today is probably going to be an absolute train wreck.
And I've watched every single one since 1998.
Have you really?
Every single one.
Why?
Because I'm a masochist. I love the pain. I think it gives you a good idea of what the president is thinking, not internally, but really as far as his own policy, where he wants to take the direction of the company, of the country, and what he thinks people want to hear.
So he's kind of revealing the playbook, which is important. He's revealing his mental models, which is important. He's showing you his bias at the same time. So you're not listening for the actual facts of what he's saying, but rather like what is the theme of what he's trying to portray, right?
And you get a good idea of state of the president. How well do they present their ideas?
We already know that there's
how in command he really is of the situation. Because some guys go up there and they crush it.
Yep.
Clinton, Obama, those guys went up there and they crushed the
They were
State
great
of the Union.
orators, yeah.
Trump crushed State of the Union. Bush, it was a little funny. He wasn't the best orator.
No, he wasn't sophisticated.
Biden, last year was his first, and it was iffy. This year, we'll see.
He's on cognitive decline, man. The guy, I mean, 2 words. Made in America. Come on, man. Like, that's another thing he says. Come on, man. Like, the guy is in serious cognitive decline. I saw a clip the other day on Twitter because there's just things that you can't avoid in the social news out there and the political news. Is like Clinton was doing some sort of speech, and he was like, "These are your notes, Joe Biden," and you could just tell. I mean, Clinton's like what 4-5 years younger than Biden, and his clarity of mind, he's got his shit together, and Biden just looks like a train wreck. He looks like a hobbled together Frankenstein man who's barely. I feel like they probably have to drug him up to get him up on stage.
I think so too. I think he has to be on some sort of pharmaceutical help in order to help him sustain that level of energy for the.
It kind of reminds me of the clips from way back, not too far back, but. Do you remember when Hillary was big in the news and they were going to, Hillary versus Trump, and there was all these, she looked like she was incapacitated. She looked like she needed to be drugged up to get placed. She was like falling over, tripping over herself.
That's right. There was a clip of her that stumbled getting into cars.
Right.
That went, and that kind of disappeared from the internet.
Of course. Censored, baby.
Yeah.
Censored. So we're talking about COVID or the vid. Sorry. Demonetized.
So officially, it's supposed to be over, coming soon. And I look around and I thought it was over like years ago, but apparently officially it's gonna be over now. And now that it's gonna be officially over, I feel like someone owes us an apology.
Who?
Everybody. They fucked this up. They were wrong. Every expert was wrong about 100% of all of it.
Pretty much.
The government was wrong.
Yep.
The pharmaceutical companies were wrong. The CDC was wrong. Totally. Everyone we relied on for 3 years of our lives was wrong. But there's no responsibility, no recourse. No one says, hey, sorry, guys. We kind of pushed it here. Nobody. People gave up their lives. People gave up the way they live. People gave up their businesses. We went through 3 years of just crazy up and down in the financial markets, socially. Friends are no longer friends, and nobody's going to apologize for that.
So I think there's 2 things I want to kind of unpack here. I think the first thing is I would actually contest that it's over. Now, just because Biden says that it's going to be over May 11th doesn't mean that it's over. We have China opening back up, and apparently they've had millions of people die from either this or the vid or the jab. So
quickly on China, I looked really deep into that. I spoke to people and friends I have in China as well about it because I was curious on how that is. If you take out the comorbidities in China for COVID, it's tiny, the amount of people dying of COVID. They're doing with their numbers the same thing we did here in the beginning.
Just making it up.
Which is, if you get into a car accident and you die, but you had COVID, that's a COVID death.
I see.
If you die of a heart attack and you had COVID, that's a COVID death. So they're doing the same model that we did here when we were showing the numbers every single day on every single news channel about all the deaths of COVID. They're doing the same exact.
So they're boosting up the numbers because we know that the government was subsidizing and paying for COVID classification, right? If you had to pay, we know this because of the documentation that came out, right? That if you came into the hospital with COVID, you got like more money. And then if you gave them drugs for that, you got more money. If they died from it, then you got even more money as a hospital. So there was a huge monetary incentive to push this narrative, yeah?
Correct. Here, it was monetary. There, they shut down the country almost completely for 3-4 years. And if people there found out that it's like a cold, people would be irate.
Well,
so they have to justify the last 3 years of their lives by saying, hey, look what happened now because we opened it up.
But wouldn't you say and again, this is just my thinking here. Wouldn't you say China, they were locking, and by the way, I want to make something really clear actually, Matt. The last 2.5, 3 years was not a COVID issue. It is a lockdown issue.
Correct.
I think that vernacular is really important for me. Whenever I'm talking with someone about the last 3 years, I always say we went into lockdown, and it wasn't. That was the thing that happened. Yes, we had COVID. Yes, we had this disease and all this stuff. But the biggest issue wasn't COVID itself. It was lockdown. That was the biggest issue. It was a control mechanism.
So it was the government control, the social control, these mechanisms that were put in place that were more dangerous than the actual disease itself.
So on that idea, I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think the lockdowns in China were specifically for depopulation. It was specific for crushing small business, crushing medium-sized business, closing down schools. I mean, creating absolute just chaos in so many ways. And so I think it's just part of the depopulation agenda. Now, some people can disagree with me on that, but I mean, let's be honest. If you're a government, and you have to think of every government out there, what's easier to control? More people or less people? Less people, clearly. And if we trace back the history of what governments are exceptionally good at, governments are exceptionally good at killing their people. Period. Full stop.
I think in China's case, there is one guy in charge of everybody. He picked one side very early on and was too proud to adjust to the other side.
You
didn't want to. I really think that's what it is. He was so hard on COVID early on.
He doubled down, tripled down.
He just kept on doubling down, tripling down, and quadrupling down. And the rest of the world was like, wait a second. Like, that's not the way to do it. They're the last to accept that. And I mean, I have friends in Shanghai and Beijing, and they're like, we score the bar, and if one guy gets COVID, everyone would scramble, run out, and everyone would turn off their phones and disappear for a week. Because if they were found to have been at that bar with that one COVID case, they may get locked up for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month.
That's right.
And you're like, this is bullshit. You know? I remember in the beginning of COVID, I have like different companies I work with over there, and like, oh yeah, hey, where's this guy? And like, oh, he's got pneumonia. Like, pneumonia? Like, oh, okay, I get what that means. You know?
Yeah.
Because they can't even say it out loud what it is.
Yeah.
You know, because everything that they say is monitored, tracked. I remember when the lockdowns were like getting reinforced, and the people in China were starting to protest it. This was maybe a few months ago.
Yeah. Because they had that one apartment building that like burned down
with people because they're locked.
Because they like welded them into their doors. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
I have to. I remember thinking deeply about this, Matt. I'm sorry for cutting you off here, but I remember thinking deeply about this. Like, what would it take for a man? We were talking about earlier, Andrew Tate. What would it take for you as a man with a wife and kids, and you have these guys that you don't know that are officials of the government welding your door shut. Like, I have to imagine that I would have raged against that. But it's so hard to put yourself in that full context and all the situation and all the unknowns and the anxiety and the what's going on. Everybody's dying. All my neighbors are dying. They're welding this door. I guess it's okay for me. It's happening right now. Do I have to make a decision? Do I want to fight them right now? They got the like. What I just have to proposition the idea to you. What would you do if that was happening? I mean, would you rage? Would you rage against it?
I say I would, but in that situation, knowing that if I were to, I'd get locked up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
My family would possibly get locked up.
They'd still weld the door shut.
Yeah. Do you actually make a change? And that's a really tough place to be. And then you go into all historical places of any type of history where people try to speak out against a bad movement and they disappear. And do you want to be that guy that no one remembers, that just goes into re-education camp and never comes out? It's not an easy decision to make. I mean, from the outside, we're like, yeah, fuck them. Of course we would do that. Of course
we'd fight.
Of course I would fight. But then if you're actually in that situation, knowing that you're risking the life of yourself and your family and your future family and your family's family, like, fuck. Do you take on that fight?
I don't know.
And sacrifice?
I mean, in retrospect, obviously, it would have been the better deal because they all burned alive, or they
or
died.
you would have burned alive anyway.
You would burn
just
alive.
for speaking out.
Fair enough. It's like the world has seen, I think, through this lockdown, the leadership of the world's hand, and they've shown their cards. They show that the leaders of the world, the architects of our society, have really shown their hand. They've shown us as a populace what they are capable of doing. And I think that is the thing that we need to learn from the most. Not that we haven't learned from this in the past. By the way, Americans have been poisoned by the government in the Tuskegee experiments. We've had false flags like Vietnam, like we blew up our own ship to get into that war.
MK Ultra, which is one I've been going down the rabbit hole.
Like, Americans have been the scientific test bed of the government experiments, and government has been killing people for decades, for generations. And so this isn't a new thing. COVID, if we were just to call it out for, at least I'll call it out for what I believe it is, I think it was the greatest scam in our lifetime.
And not to say people didn't get sick. There are people that got sick. There are people that died. Not as many as they said it would be. Not as many as they told us it would be. My 92-year-old grandmother, fine.
She's a hoss.
And she was pissed off that we didn't let her leave the house when she had it. You
should let her live, man.
She's
a gangster.
Yeah, and yeah.
So I want to get to this, the comment you made, though. You said there's nobody apologizing. So I saw this thing happen maybe 4 or 5 months ago where I forget what it was called, but it was like, not restitution, but it was some other word of, for those who pushed the jab, those who pushed the narrative, we should give them amnesty, right? We should forgive them because they knew not what they did. And so your comment made me think about that. Should we, the entire world, I don't know who it is, be given an apology? What has to happen to rectify? Because things don't change like the way they changed from lockdown, and then suddenly we roll back the tape and it's not happening anymore. There have been policies enacted. There have been regulations enacted. There's been legislation that has been enacted. There's been overstepping of boundaries from government and police and military that's happened. None of this is going to get rolled back. It's only moving forward. So it's only going to get worse. So what does the world need from the governments in terms of an apology? Do they deserve an apology?
I think we deserve an apology. I think we deserve an apology. In order to move forward, in order to learn, someone needs to be accountable. Where did we go wrong? And these are discussions that we should be allowed to have. These are discussions that we should encourage people to have. Where do we fuck up? How do we as a people allow this to happen even? how were they able to use media and fear to make us compliant, to make us just assume that what we were told is correct? And why did we not fight back? Were we so scared as a people, as a general population? We were so scared.
I remember
that we were scared to even speak up because when COVID happened, I remember when I first realized COVID was going on, I was in Miami during Super Bowl week. This was January or February of 2020.
Yep.
And me and my wife, we were in Miami. After the trip, we were in the Delta Lounge flying back, and I was getting a cup of coffee, and I happened to sneeze. I went, achoo, and I sneezed. And all the people in the coffee line around me,
they reacted.
They all reacted. Because they saw an Asian guy, because not all Asians in Miami. They saw an Asian guy sneeze.
You're the Chinese guy who brought over the disease. I get it.
And everyone, and all of a sudden, I had like this 20-foot radius around me. And I was like, fuck.
It's not a bad way to clear a room.
This is going to be a thing. I felt it initially. I mean, I felt it immediately. I can't believe this is a thing.
You're not wrong.
And then in Korea, because Korea and Asia, they've been through SARS and all this before. They were getting proactively buying masks. They're proactively being a little more cautious, which I get because they've been through this before. And so we saw that happening. We have a lot of family in Korea, and we saw them kind of panicking. So we're like, okay, this is not going to be good because it has to get here. And then the first cruise ship where Americans were on, it was in Japan. And this was early on in COVID, and they locked it down because they said people on that cruise ship had COVID.
I think I remember hearing that, yeah.
A family friend was on that cruise ship. They were older, retired couple, and they were doing a cruise. They died on that cruise ship.
No.
Yeah, because everyone got locked down. Everyone got COVID. They didn't know what to do. They put everyone on respirators. They died on the cruise ship. The only person I know that died of COVID was on that cruise ship that first month.
Really? Now, do you think it was COVID that killed them, or was it the respirators that killed them?
Well, we all know it was respirators, right? We all know that it was the reaction to it and that the initial treatment was not correct. I mean, we know that. That's a fact, right? But at that moment, I knew like, oh man, like this could be a thing. And they told us it's a respiratory disease. They told us that if you don't wear a mask, you can give it to other people and other people will die. We know the truth now, but that's what we were told. And me and my wife, we wanted to do the right thing. I wasn't scared that I was going to die, but they told me that if I were to practice these certain things in life, that I could protect and possibly save the lives of others. Me trying to be a good person in life, I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm told. Not because I feel like I'm being compliant. Because even if there's a 5% chance that what they're saying is true, I might as well err on the side of caution and save somebody's life. I don't want to be responsible for killing anybody.
Man, it's such a strong argument, right? It's such a strong argument that you're doing this you are, let's take the meta of it. You are reducing your freedoms for the greater good of society. The argument is sound. It's just, it's also not sound.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't believe them. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the media.
As you shouldn't.
And even with that great level of distrust, for that small percentage chance that they may actually be correct, I was willing to give up my freedom. And in doing so, our business suffered. Social, I saw less friends.
You had more social isolation.
Correct.
Psychological issues. Yeah.
Being home with your wife 24/7 for a year is very stressful and hard. Right? I think there was a lot of divorce during COVID.
Totally.
Because you put two people that are used to having their own lives, at least in some way, shape, or form, stuck together all the time. Yeah. It's stressful.
And they realized they didn't really like each other all that much.
And I gave up and I went through all of that because I believed that at least for a small chance, I may be doing something good for somebody else.
Do you feel like you were duped?
I do. I feel like I was duped. I feel like I gave up these things and it was based all on a lie. That pisses me off.
It's not insignificant. It's not like this was what was it, 6 weeks to lower the spread or whatever it was. I mean, this ended up being a good solid 2.5 years easy of absolute lockdown, right? And so you had to change fundamental things around your life, behaviors, social interactions. And so you say you felt duped. I mean, how do you reconcile yourself? Just Matt Kim, how do you reconcile that feeling of like, dude, I was told a lie. There was a percentage of that narrative that could be true rationally within good reason. For me to be a good human, for me to be a good citizen, am I willing to take that small percentage of truth within the wrapping of a lie and defer to that because the potential of the greater good is better, even though I am now reducing my own freedoms? I mean, how do you reconcile that, bro?
At least in my own mind, in my heart, I know I was trying to do the right thing. And that's a decision I made. And I accept that. I still feel kind of irked about it.
As you should. You were
I remember
sold the bill of goods.
The moment that I was most pissed off, I think, during the post-COVID era, post-COVID burst, right? Was when there was those pictures and video of Obama's birthday party in Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, only the slaves were wearing masks.
Exactly. And I thought if COVID was real, Obama would know what the real deal is. He gets updates, right? Not only does he get updates, but if there was a treatment out there that could save it, if it was really as bad as they say, he would have first crack at it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He'd get first crack.
But he had his party anyway. And their excuse was, oh, but the laws here are allow this. I said, wait a second. The laws there and law here are different?
Yeah, rules for thee, not for me.
And I was like, what the hell is going on? How is this guy allowed to have his birthday party of a banger? People are all these climate warriors are flying in on their private jets.
That do more carbon emissions than your car in an entire year.
Celebrities. Like, why are there celebrities at Obama's birthday party? Why is it so important to him to have a birthday party in the middle of everyone? You got to stay home. You can't gather for Thanksgiving. You can't gather for Christmas. Yes. You can't do a 4th of July barbecue. You can't do all this stuff. But I'm King Obama, and I'm allowed to have my birthday party. And you guys are not allowed to say anything about it. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Though pictures like that were, I think, very elucidating. They were very revealing of the gap between the elites and the rest of us plebes, right? It's like rules for thee, not for me, right? These are all rules for you, you slaves, you working class, you proletariat, right? But for the elites, we're immune to this. And they just like you said, Obama would have the best information at his disposal. And if he were to, and I'm taking a crack at him here, I guess, but if he were to truly be a leader who leads by example, that people would want to emulate, then he should be following the same bloody protocol that you and I were forced to follow, right?
He could have had a Zoom party. Right? Like everybody else.
Yeah, like everybody else.
Yeah, a Zoom rave or something.
You want to know one of the most depressing things that happened during lockdown were Zoom weddings. I participated, or no, I didn't. I was going to participate in a relative's Zoom wedding, and I decided not to because I knew that this was going to be a whole bunch of what a waste of my time staring at a screen with these pixelated people walking down an aisle, getting married with nobody in there, and everyone looks like they're all hopped up on it looks so sterile and unfeeling. And then I remember receiving some clips afterwards, or the replay after it, and it's like, why would I want to watch this? You guys are just standing around like derps. No one's doing anything, and it was so unpersonal. I think if I were to speak just to pull off what you said, what pissed you off the most and kind of help you realize that this was all a farce was this Obama birthday. What pissed me off is when I started seeing pictures of old people with hazmat suits on, masks on, and like a plastic film, and they're trying to hug each other through this plastic. It was so depressing. I was like, this old couple they're on their last leg of life, and they literally cannot touch each other. Like, that angered me so much because for me, it was the cutting off of human connection, you know,
And
that
I
this
wasn't
lockdown thing did.
seeing people in hazmat suits, seeing people in masks. I don't get angry at those people because they're scared.
Mm.
I can't be mad at them for being scared. I'm mad at the people that made them scared, that are shilling the fear, that are promoting the fear, that are making people so scared that they have to live that way. If you're 80 and you're scared that this is it for you, like death is scary. And if that's the way they can protect themselves, because people do anything to live longer.
Yeah, when the chips are down.
Correct. People will do anything to survive.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at those people. Like when I go to the airport now, people, it's very clear. 25% of people wear their mask and 75% of people don't. And every once in a while, someone will say to me, "Oh, I can't believe those people are still wearing their masks." And I get it. But again, they're scared. There are a lot of people that are scared of a lot of things in life. You don't judge other people for being scared.
Fair enough.
Right?
Masks creates an obvious divergence of worldview, though, right? And so I have to ask you this: do you judge them?
No. I have no problem with other people. I think that I truly believe in freedom of choice. And if they choose to wear a mask on their own, that's their choice. Who am I to judge them for what they choose to do?
It's only when they come to you and be like, "Bro, where's your mask?"
Exactly.
Right? And they start
if they try to
forcing you
put it on me, then like, bro, like, do your own shit, right? But if they're doing it, I have no problem with it at all, because it's their choice. And if they feel that much safer, regardless of what information they have, who am I to judge what they do with their lives? They could walk around. I don't judge people for what they wear. I don't judge people for what they drive. I don't judge people for, being scared of spiders. There's a lot of things people are scared of in life. Why would I judge them on being scared of COVID? Wear your mask. I don't care. It doesn't bother me one bit. But don't tell me I have to wear mine. Because I think just as much as I give people the ability to have their own freedom of choice, I should be allotted the same freedom of choice. I don't want to wear it.
So the government and the leaders owe the world reparations, an apology. Do they need to go to jail because people actually died from these decisions they made? Like, what needs to happen next? Because if nothing happens, which is most likely what's going to happen, is we're going to have a repeat of this exact same thing in the next 3 to 5 years. And you guys don't have to believe me, but Bill Gates, I've watched clips of Bill Gates smirking and saying stuff like, "The next time this happens, the world will pay attention finally," or something like this. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I'm not making this up. Right. He literally smiling and smirking and going, no one took it seriously this time, but we're going to make sure next time people take it seriously. It's like, bro, like, you made like billions of dollars off this. Clearly, you're economically incentivized that this will happen again. So what do you think? Where do we need to go? What needs to happen next?
Well, first is that people need to be allowed to have these conversations.
Fair enough.
That's the basic, is that for years, if you try to have this conversation, it was taken off the internet. Yeah. You couldn't even have these conversations.
So we're just being courageous by talking about it.
I mean, who knows? Today, maybe it's allowed. Maybe tomorrow, this will be gone. Maybe the day after, it's allowed again. Maybe two months later, like, "Oh, just kidding. You can't talk about this anymore." We don't know.
Fair enough.
But open discourse needs to be allowed. You can't stop people from communicating, from talking, for having open discussions about their ideas.
So what would you say to someone who said, "Hey, lockdown was 2.5 years ago, or I guess it was a year ago now, bro, get over it"? What do you say to the people like that?
We have to learn. We have to discuss, and we haven't had these discussions yet. We've all had these discussions in private. We've all sat at home with our friends and our homies and had this talk. Why aren't people talking about it online? Because you can't. And the few people that do, they're labeled as zealots. They're labeled as extremists.
Or conspiracy theorists.
It's
fascinating how many conspiracies are actually coming true.
You're more likely to be true than not at this point.
It really is like the conspiracy theorists, I think, are having their time in the sun these days. I mean, everything is as much as what was his name? Alex Jones. Like, I think for me, I put him in a similar bucket as Andrew Tate. He's loud. He's rambunctious. He's absolutely, has all the animated things that make it look like he's crazy. But at the end of the day, I think if I remember watching, there's this tweet that was like, here's 30 things that Alex Jones said, and he's been right on like 27 of them. So it was like, oh my gosh, bro, like you kind of knew what was going on, right?
Yeah.
So,
and they get him for that one thing. And I mean, they're going after him for the Sandy Hook thing because he said it wasn't real and whatever else, and they sued him. But the judgment on him was like billions of dollars. Like, come on, man. That's so ridiculous. He's not a billionaire.
I think it's actually in the trillions.
It was trillion dollars or whatever. It's so ridiculous. It's such, and when you see that number of what he officially owes, it's theater.
It is.
It's just theater. It's just political theater.
So do you think he's controlled opposition? That's an interesting word.
That is an interesting word. I think he's got too big of a following. He's so rambunctious that you have to let him go just a little bit. Because if you completely shut him up, it's the same thing with Andrew Tate. He becomes a martyr.
Yeah.
And they have to give him a little time to breathe. And I think he knows that he is part entertainment and part conspiracy theorist.
He might be more entertainment than conspiracy theorist.
I think so. And I think he understands that. That part of the things he says in an extreme way, it's for entertainment, and he just happens to be right sometimes.
His hit rate's pretty good actually over the last couple decades though.
But once you project yourself as that guy, then people naturally find you and they're like, hey, guess what? I know. So he gets that information that maybe people don't take to somebody else, because at least he represents that cause, for lack of a word. And people will bring him the information that maybe you don't take to another news source because you don't think that they'll produce it.
That's true. So he's like a safe repository for these fringe ideas.
Correct.
Put it that way, because we really shouldn't call them conspiracies because they're actually kind of truthful. So he's a great repository for these fringe ideas, these unbaked ideas from fringe individuals who might have information or whatnot. And of course, that information can be sketchy or true, but he's willing to take a chance on either and be able to socialize and communicate it out.
He just doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
He'll just say it.
Yeah.
He's been canceled so many times, and now he owes $1 trillion. Like, what do you have to lose?
Like if you think about it, that type of number is actually really liberating.
Yeah.
I mean, if they said, hey, you owe $15 million, like, shit, I need to make that up.
I got to pay that back.
But if you say, you owe us $1 billion, it's like,
I'm good.
Sure. Like, what, 9 million installments of $1 a day? Sure, fine. Have at it, right?
You'll never pay that back.
You'll never pay that back.
And yeah, exactly. I love that word. It's liberating.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, they gave him freedom.
Yeah.
That's like, crazy. I never thought of it. That's funny.
Think about that. Like, think literally, if someone came to you and said, we have all this proof you owe $10 million and you got to pay it back. It's like, fuck, bro. Like,
I need to pay this shit back.
I need to pay this shit. I gotta grind my ass. I gotta be, I was thinking about, what's his name? The football player that invested all of his life savings in the FTX.
Tom Brady.
I'm thinking about Tom Brady. Tom Brady's like, oh, fuck, I got to play football for 10 more years. I wasted all my money on this. But like $10 million, you got to pay it back. But if it's like $1 billion, $1 trillion, it's like, okay.
Fuck y'all.
Any other, hey, add on that debt. Add on more debt. It's in there somewhere.
Don't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now I'm co-signing for every loan.
Exactly.
What are they going to do? Come after me?
Put it on there. I'll default on. Don't care.
Yeah.
I owe
Endless debt.
Endless debt, man. It's like the government.
Like the government.
Perfect. So I'm curious. I'd love kind of your perspectives on this, because I'm glad that we're talking about the vid. I'm glad we're talking about lockdown. I'm glad that you and I mean, we lived it through this together, and we're in close proximity and all that fun stuff. But I think it's liberating to me, using that word again, that we can speak openly, and we don't know if we're going to get censored.
We have no idea. We have no idea if this will ever see the light of day.
But I think it's important that people, those that do listen to this, they realize that there are men out there that are willing to talk about it rationally, willing to talk about it openly. You and I don't have all the answers.
No.
We are two mere anecdotes of 4 decades of life, and we feel like we have a good overall picture of what's going on, and something stinks. Something's not right, is what we know, right?
Old enough to have lived through some trauma.
And the patterns.
Young enough to have the energy to speak of it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's important. So for everyone out there, they should continue to talk about it, because if not, this will be relegated to a history that is going to be refined, curated, as you well know, because revisionist history is a huge thing. Like I absolutely abhor, just going on to a tangent for a second here, but I absolutely abhor Wikipedia. Most people don't realize that Wikipedia is basically curated by just a handful of people.
Correct.
And they are constantly revising history all the time. And so the history of lockdown, I promise you, and I'm sure you can agree to this from a mental perspective, I promise you 3 decades, 4 decades from now, when we're 70, 80 years old, we're going to look back at these historical anecdotes of lockdown, and it's going to be completely a different story and told from the wrong perspective, that it was a good thing or something like this.
I agree. I think that's what it will be in our near future. I think once we go 200 years in the future, history will recorrect itself, and we'll remember it as something to learn from.
I see where you're going. I understand.
Yeah, I think in the long term, I think history will be very favorable on Donald Trump. I think history will, long-term history, not near history, long-term history will be very, very favorable on Donald Trump. I think it will be very favorable on Elon Musk. I think these people will be seen as people who try to change the world. And history is very favorable to those guys. People are favorable to people who changed the direction of the world, people who had different ideas, people who went against the grain of what common thought was. History is very favorable to those guys.
Do you think Elon Musk is a big reason why people are having strength and people are having a little bit more courage to talk about these things online because of what he's done with Twitter?
I think Elon Musk is the reason that if this video does not get taken down, he's the reason why this video doesn't get taken down. Because before him, any talk about this was taken down immediately.
Absolutely.
But now that he's allowing on his platform this type of speech, the other platforms are almost following him. And I also think, side note, that he's able to run Twitter more efficiently now with his small skeleton crew than he is with the 10,000 people they had before.
Of course. Have you seen those TikTok videos of like the day in a life in Twitter, the day in a life in Google? Like, I'm sorry. I know, girl, you have a wonderful life. I'm sure you were well taken care of. You're smart. You got the job. But dag fucking shit, man. Like, when I see those day in a life in Twitter where it's like, I wake up in the morning, I get my $9 latte for free from the Twitter office, and then I go up and then I get a massage, and then I pick out my 2 drinks for the day, which is a $9 whatever, kombucha, and like a $5 tea, and then I have some meetings, and after that I go eat my free food that's $500 worth of bar food, and then after that I have another meeting, and then I have my stress break for yoga. It's like, what kind of work did they actually do in these companies, Matt?
It's crazy because he shut all that shit down, and that app is running better than it ever has.
Absolutely. with 70% less people working.
Correct.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
And the fact that he's able to focus on that, still have Tesla up and running, doing extremely well,
and SpaceX.
that they are still turning a profit, which nobody in the car business does, turn a profit, and try to get people on the moon.
Yeah.
At the same time, and build tunnels. I'm like, bro, this guy is amazing. And for anyone to argue that he's not amazing is just fucking mind blowing.
It's absolutely retarded. I remember seeing social commentators saying Elon Musk is taking over Twitter. He's going to tear it in the ground. I'm like, this guy shoots rockets into the space, bro. Yeah. Like, you think he can't handle a social network? Come on.
The negative backlash that Elon is getting is just mind-blowing because everyone that talks poorly of Elon now will be a joke in the history of the world.
Fair enough.
Because he will be remembered as one of the greatest men of our generation and of our lifetime.
He's kind of like our modern-day Tesla.
Exactly.
Kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, our Edison, our whatever, This guy is one that changed the way that we live our lives. We'll live our lives in the future. And again, history will be extremely favorable Elon Musk. There's no way 200 years from now they go, oh, that guy was a bad guy. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah, only the next 30, 40 years of revisionist history is going to give him shit and say that he was a terrible person. He was a alt-right extremist or some nonsense like that, right?
But once you take that emotion out of it in 100 years, and that next generation of young children or young kids are learning about Elon, he's going to be a hero. There's going to be video games on him. There's going to be T-shirts on him. There's going to be books on him.
Yeah, because they're going to look at the output of what he did, not necessarily the nonsense that he said.
Correct.
Right? He created rockets. He created huge tunnels for us to move packages, intercontinental packages in in minutes, not hours, as he's shooting these things underground. He's able to, he's going to, the long-term history, I like the way that you said that. The long-term history is going to be very favorable on him. The short-term revisionist history is going to be very poor.
Correct.
It's all politics at that point.
So another side tangent then. He's trying to take people to Mars. He said something like he needs 100,000 people or 1 million people, it was one of those numbers, to go in order to be able to recreate sustainable society over there. That's what he said. That
when? That's my question. Are we going to be alive for this? Because if we have money, I'd like to go.
That was the question. If you had the ability to go and be one of the pioneers of a new society on a different planet, a new interplanetary society, would you want to be on that trip?
Yes. No question. No question. Now, let me give you a caveat. Mm-hmm. I would assume that at the point that I am able to take this journey with him, that my kids are out, they're married, they have good careers, they're doing what they need to do. I'm in my older age, and I have the capacity and I have the free time and money to do it, is the assertion there. So I'm empty nester, my kids are off, successful. Elon comes to me when I'm 69 or 70 years old, and he says, you want to be part of the early expedition to Mars? Hell fucking yeah, dude.
So you would leave your family behind. Because
dude, I've had a good life at 70 years old.
Because
by that point, man.
I think the idea is that if you go there, you would need to be able to have the ability to procreate to some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, society would not sustain there. I don't think he would take people that are empty nesters. He would need to take people that are either multi-generational or have the ability to create. Otherwise, what are you doing there? Right? Because the idea is
Matt's fucking up my dreams here. He's making it all logical and rational, like these two Asians here, man.
Because the idea is that you're going there to recreate society.
Fair enough. Okay, so as a 70-year-old, I'm probably not
on the list.
Yeah. So I would not be on the list because I would be old and gray, feeble, and what strapping young lady would want to procreate with me?
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they would.
Maybe they would. Maybe if it's money.
Mm-hmm. So the idea is that because someone asked him how much would it cost for somebody to go, and he said, I don't think the money is the issue, because even if you were to borrow the cost, once you get there, the jobs and the things that you would need to do, you can earn that money back. Plus, you'll be one of the first people on a new planet.
Fair enough.
Paying back whatever that cost is nothing.
But also the amount of hard labor that you're going to have to do, it's like you're going to be grinding your ass building that civilization. Correct.
But you would be one of the first people on a brand new planet.
I mean,
which is crazy.
When you said that, that's why no hesitation. I was like, of course.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna be living out my twilight years, man, send me to Mars. I can put in some work. I can do some stuff.
Imagine being one of the first families ever in America. Like what that means for your entire history of your family and your life and the impact you have on the world.
You know where my sick brain went? Is that if you're the first family in America, you probably got dysentery. You probably got the plague. You probably got your ass handed to you. Right? You probably got diseases.
That may be true of the first people on Mars.
Oh, shit.
I mean, it's the unknown.
It is.
But to be there and to survive it would make you legendary.
Legendary.
Yeah. But it's a huge risk. I talked about this with my wife the other day.
What'd she say?
And she was like, what if we die? I said, that's the risk. What if we don't?
What if we become legends?
Exactly. And she was intrigued by that idea. that you can be the first in something in life. And I think that idea and that thought alone will attract a lot of people that want more for them, that don't want to just die as a statistic, but want to die as a real piece of history. And that alone, people would be willing to take that risk.
So let me ask you a question on that then. Does that matter to you? Does that matter to, like, I don't, let me take a guess, or an educated guess. From my years of knowing you, I have never seen you as one who cares all that much about money. I've never seen you as one who cares about the fame. I've never seen you as one who cares about being an influencer or any of those social nuggets or social, celebrations or milestones or achievements. I've never seen you as someone who cares all that much about that. And so I'm curious about this, first on Mars. Is that something that you would care about? Is that something that would drive you?
I think as a man, you have to consider it. Because what if you had the opportunity to change the history and the course of your progeny forever? And to not consider it, I think it's foolish. To discount it as stupid, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Whether or not I really want it, I don't know. I think if the opportunity ever came, and who knows if I'll ever be presented the opportunity. If I were, it would take some serious soul searching. And I think it's easy to say, oh yeah, of course I want to do that. But once you're ready, I mean, it's like people who become astronauts. There's no money in being an astronaut.
No.
There's very little fame in being an astronaut. But for the rest of your life, you're the person that made it there. And that's something. And that's why most people do it, to go do the unknown. Would I do it? I don't know. I don't know if I would do it. I don't know how important it is. And I think I'd have to know that it's real for me to really dig deep.
What, you wouldn't want to go up in Jeff Bezos's penis rocket and be like, bro,
that I think is a waste of my time. I have no interest in spending that time to not even break orbit, right? Because again, Elon said they're not even going to space.
Not wrong. We're still in low Earth orbit.
Correct. Right. You're just really high in a plane. That's all it is, right? And that doesn't attract me. Before I knew that, I thought, oh, wow, Jeff Bezos, he's going to space.
Yeah.
And then Elon broke it down. I was like, oh, thanks for ruining it for me. Now it sounds so stupid.
Actually, I had the same realization when I dug into it. I was like, I was giving Jeff, I think, a lot more props than props were due.
Yeah.
Once I learned about it, I was like, you're basically only went like 20,000 feet higher than a regular plane.
Basically a little bit higher than the balloon.
Yeah. It's like, so how much did that cost the taxpayers? Because, you didn't pay for this. So that was a kind of a huge letdown. And I almost feel like it was for him, that penis rocket was truly all ego. It's like,
it's literally an ego trip.
Yeah, because nothing really came of it. Elon's actually trying to do stuff with his rockets. He's like iterating on this shit. He's trying to actually figure out how to make it work. Where I feel like Bezos is just like, guys, I'm a billionaire and I'm going to do billionaire shit.
Correct.
And part of billionaire shit is I'm going to design a rocket that literally looks like a penis head. And I'm going to fake you guys all out by shooting it up into low Earth orbit, which is basically just a high-powered plane. And that's it. Like true dick swing and ego, like in my opinion.
And I watched I completely agree. I watched a couple people talk about the pictures that you get from there. And they talk about how they use a really super wide angle lens.
Oh, like a fisheye.
Correct. In order to make it seem like you're really high up. So you get the curvature of the Earth. But reality is that if you were in that thing, from your eye, it would be flat because you're so close. You actually wouldn't see the edges of the Earth. It's all manipulation. Who was saying that? The guy that's been doing a lot of podcasts recently, a black guy, scientist.
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah. He was the one that went on that. He's like, dude, like you're not actually seeing anything.
Yeah, he actually said that, I think. Yeah. I think
from as far above the orbit as you are, it's literally like looking at the table.
Yeah, exactly.
There'd be no curvature to where you are.
Every time I've taken a flight and it's been a clear day as far as the eye can see, and we're up, 45, 60,000 feet or something like that, cruising altitude. the whole world is just flat. It's just a table.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't see any curvature, which is always interesting to me because I remember in science class they were talking about the curve is like, I forget, it's like 6 or 8 inches per every certain miles or something like that. And I always found that to be odd because whenever I was in a plane, especially when I was younger in high school and college, I always found that to be odd because I never felt like the plane was actually curving downward with the curve. So that was just always one of those things that I never thought too hard about, but it was always strange to me.
I mean, we could go into flat Earth, but let's.
Oh, is that where we're going?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to. But it immediately got me thinking about flat Earth.
Oh, yeah. Actually, now that he said that, I was like, oh shit. Now we're getting into.
Now we're getting
Alex
flat Earth.
Jones. Does Alex Jones talk about this shit?
I don't know if he does. I want to look it up.